I never thought I'd be writing here. Honestly, I used to scroll through this sub at 2 a.m., shake my head at people ignoring red flags, and think, that could never be me. Well, guess what? It's me. I, 38, have been married to my wife, 32, for almost 7 years. We met in college, got together pretty quickly, and at the time she felt like the most ambitious, quick-witted person I'd ever met. People were drawn to her charm. It was like she could walk into a room and bend it around her finger. I used to admire that, but now I see it differently. My best friend, 33, has been in my life since high school. He's always been the fun one, the guy with the sarcastic comments, the one who could talk his way out of anything. He was also the person I trusted the most outside of L. The three of us had this dynamic where D was practically part of the family. Sunday dinners, vacations, birthdays, he was there. The first warning signs were subtle. Elle suddenly got busier with work, but her explanations were vague. She'd say she was meeting with clients late into the night, but when I'd ask for details, she'd change the subject or laugh it off like I was being paranoid. Dee, meanwhile, started making little digs at me in front of her, jokes that went a bit too far about me being clueless or too trusting. They'd share these looks sometimes, quick glances that I couldn't quite place. At first, I brushed it off as me overthinking, but deep down, something felt wrong. The actual discovery didn't happen in one big, caught red-handed moment. It was more like death by 1,000 paper cuts, small things stacking up until the weight of it all finally crushed me. One night, Elle came home late, again. She smelled faintly of cologne that wasn't mine, and when I asked about it, she laughed and said she'd hugged a coworker goodbye after drinks. The way she said it, with that casual tone she uses when she's trying to make me feel like the crazy one, left me uneasy. The real crack in the facade came about a week later. She'd left her laptop open on the kitchen counter when she ran to the store. Normally, I wouldn't snoop. I've always believed in trust. But her email pinged and my curiosity got the better of me. The subject line read, "Last night," from none other than D. My stomach dropped. When I clicked, the email had already been deleted. Just gone. I thought maybe I was imagining things, but I checked the trash folder. Empty. Elle never deletes anything. She still has emails from 2012. That was my first real confirmation. I didn't say anything right away. Instead, I started paying attention. Her phone, once left out in the open, now lived face down or tucked into her pocket. She suddenly had a password on it, which she explained away as work privacy. Meanwhile, Dee started canceling on me more often, but not on her. Like if we had plans to watch a game, he'd bail, and then I'd find out later he was hanging out with Elle under some flimsy pretense. The final straw was when I noticed her car parked 2 blocks away from a hotel downtown. She'd told me she was at a late-night strategy meeting. I sat in my car for an hour, just staring at her car, waiting for something that would make me feel less insane. But nothing came. Just the growing, sickening certainty that my wife and my best friend were doing something they thought I'd never figure out. That was the night I knew. I didn't storm in, at least not at first. I wanted to be sure, to have something undeniable. So I waited until the next evening when Elle got home. She was all smiles, talking about some client dinner. I asked casually, "How was the hotel downtown?" Her face froze for half a second. Just a flicker, but I caught it. Then she laughed, like a full theatrical laugh. "You're seriously jealous of a hotel now? God, you've been so paranoid lately. Maybe you should talk to someone about that." That one sentence hit me harder than if she'd admitted it. Gaslighting 101. Twist it back on me, make me the unstable one. I told her I'd seen her car there. She shrugged and said she'd parked downtown to walk off stress, at midnight, in heels. After a meeting. I asked point blank if she was seeing D. She smirked. Not denial, not outrage. Just this smug little smirk that made my blood boil. Then came the performance. "Are you insane? He's like a brother to me. You always jump to conclusions. Do you really think I'd risk our marriage for him?" The lies poured out like a rehearsed script. I tried calling D right then, putting him on speaker. He didn't answer at first, then finally picked up, voice low and cautious. When I asked if he'd been with L, he immediately got defensive. What the hell, man? Are you drunk or something? Don't drag me into your trust issues. That was it. That's when the friendship died for me. The way his tone shifted, like I was some nuisance he had to swat away, told me everything I needed. Elle stormed off after the fight, slamming doors and muttering about how she couldn't live like this. D went dark. No replies, no explanations, and I was left standing in the living room, realizing the two people I trusted most had just tag-teamed me with lies. That night, after she stormed off to the guest room, I just sat in the dark living room for hours. No TV, no phone, just me staring at the wall, trying to make sense of what just happened. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped everything out of me and left me running on fumes. The betrayal didn't even hit me fully yet. It was more like I was outside my own body, watching my life collapse in slow motion. One part of me kept saying, she wouldn't actually do this. Not with D. Not after everything. The other part just replayed that smirk of hers over and over. Sleep didn't happen. Around 3 a.m., I caught myself scrolling through old photos. Vacations with the three of us, birthday parties, dumb selfies. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. How often she leaned toward D in pictures, the way his hand lingered on her shoulder. It was all there, hiding in plain sight, and I felt like the biggest fool alive. By morning, I was exhausted, but she acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, hummed in the kitchen, even kissed me on the cheek on her way out the door. Like the fight never existed. That coldness, the ability to compartmentalize and pretend, cut deeper than the affair itself. It wasn't just cheating, it was the casual cruelty of treating me like I was disposable. And D, radio silence. Normally he'd text some dumb meme or ask about weekend plans. Nothing. It was like he'd flipped a switch and decided I wasn't part of his life anymore. That's when the sadness started creeping in, pushing past the shock. I kept asking myself, how long has this been going on? How many times did I sit across from them laughing over dinner while they laughed at me behind my back? I felt like my entire marriage and my longest friendship had been a carefully staged play, and I was the idiot who bought a front row ticket. The sadness didn't stay soft for long. It turned into rage. Real, ugly rage that scared me. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard on my way to work that my hands cramped. I wasn't angry at just one of them. I was angry at both. The woman who vowed to be my partner and the guy who was supposed to be my brother in everything but blood. But the anger would come in waves, followed by these crushing lows. I'd be furious one minute, then staring blankly at my desk the next, wondering how I could have been so blind. My coworkers even asked if I was sick because I looked so drained. The worst moments were the mornings, waking up and realizing, no, it wasn't a nightmare. This is real. She really did this. Sometimes I'd catch myself half hoping it was just paranoia, that I was misreading everything. But then I'd remember her smirk, his defensiveness, the hotel, and the hope would die all over again. I also started replaying every conversation with D in my head. All those nights we'd sat on the porch drinking beers, him giving me advice about L. Now I wondered, was he testing boundaries? Was he laughing behind my back while pretending to be my confidant? There was one night where I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and drafted this massive text to D. Pages of rage, insults, questions, but I deleted it before hitting send. Why give him the satisfaction of knowing how much he'd gutted me? That's when the sadness hit harder than the anger. Because I realized something. Even if I confronted them 100 more times, I'd never get the truth. They were both too good at lying. They'd twist, deflect, laugh, and make me feel insane again. And that realization, knowing I'd never hear them admit it, was like watching a door slam shut on the life I thought I had. I lasted maybe a week before I snapped again. pretending everything was fine while my gut screamed otherwise was unbearable. Elle was acting extra sweet, making my favorite meals, checking in on me during the day, even suggesting we plan a weekend getaway. It was too perfect, like she was overcompensating. One night I told her I wanted to talk. No jokes, no deflections. I said, I know about you and Dee. I don't need you to admit it, but I need you to understand that I know. Her reaction was bizarre. First, she rolled her eyes, then she laughed. God, you're obsessed. You've made up this fantasy in your head because you're insecure. She leaned across the table and said, You're embarrassing yourself. That broke something in me. I raised my voice for the first time in years, telling her how I'd seen her car at the hotel, how Dee dodged me, how the emails had disappeared. She didn't flinch. She crossed her arms and said, So what if I was there? So what if I text him? None of it proves anything. And then she dropped the nuclear bomb. You're just jealous of him. You always have been. I swear my ears rang. Jealous? Of the guy who just gutted my marriage? She flipped the entire script so smoothly it was like she'd rehearsed it. And for a split second, I almost questioned myself again. That's how sharp she is. How sharp they both are. I stormed out, slammed the door, and drove with no destination. Ended up in some empty Walmart parking lot at midnight, just sitting in the car, fists clenched, crying like a kid. When I came back home hours later, she was asleep, lights off, like nothing had happened. And on the nightstand, her phone lit up with a notification from Dee. I couldn't see the message, but the preview just said, He's on to us. That was the real breaking point. No more doubts, no more paranoia. I finally had the undeniable proof I'd been searching for. The next morning, I didn't even wait for coffee. I drove straight to Dee's place. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel the whole way. He answered the door half asleep, hair a mess, wearing a t-shirt I'd literally given him years ago. I didn't bother with small talk. I just said, I saw the text. I know. His face went pale for a second. Then he recovered with that same smug attitude Elle had used. Man, you're blowing this way out of proportion. She's just been venting to me because you've been paranoid, that's all. I lost it. I shoved him back into his apartment and slammed the door behind me. I demanded the truth, how long it had been going on, how many times he'd lied to my face. His responses were slippery, all half-truths and dodges. You think she's happy with you? Look at how insecure you are. She needed someone to actually listen. You've always been too uptight. She deserves better. Every word was like gasoline on fire. This wasn't guilt. This wasn't remorse. It was justification. He didn't deny sleeping with her. He just tried to spin it as something inevitable, like he was doing her a favor. I came inches from punching him, but I stopped myself. Instead, I spat out, "You're dead to me," and walked out. He yelled after me, "You're gonna regret this when she leaves you, man." That was the moment I realized I hadn't just lost a wife. I'd lost my best friend, too. Both of them gone in one brutal sweep. On the drive home, the rage gave way to this crushing emptiness. I had no idea what to do next. Divorce? Kick her out? Try to salvage something? My whole life felt like it had been written by someone else, and I was just now reading the last page. After the showdown with Dee, everything around me went quiet in this eerie way, like the volume knob on my life had been turned all the way down. Elle barely acknowledged me when I got home. She was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone, totally calm, like she hadn't just detonated my entire world. When I walked past her, she didn't even look up. That indifference, it cut deeper than any screaming match could have. I felt like I had no one. My best friend was the enemy, and my wife was a stranger who wore her cruelty like perfume. Telling anyone else felt impossible. How do you explain that your marriage and longest friendship imploded at the same time without sounding pathetic? The loneliness became unbearable. I stopped eating properly. Sleep came in short bursts filled with nightmares where I'd walk in on them laughing at me. I tried throwing myself into work, but my brain just wouldn't cooperate. I'd sit there staring at my screen, replaying the same moments, the hotel, the smirk, the text that read, "He's on to us." At one point, I even caught myself drafting a message to my mom, something like, "Hey, L&D betrayed me. Don't know what to do." But I deleted it. I didn't want to see the disappointment in her eyes, or worse, the pity. The isolation twisted me up. I started doubting my own worth. Maybe Elle was right. Maybe I was too paranoid, too uptight, too boring. Maybe D had something I didn't. That thought was poison, but it stuck. And the worst part? Elle carried on like nothing was wrong. Making plans with friends, going to yoga, humming while she did dishes. She was living her best life while I was rotting inside. That's when I realized, if I didn't do something soon, I was going to disappear completely. The snap moment came out of nowhere. I was at the grocery store looking like hell. Hadn't shaved in days, wearing the same hoodie 3 days straight. I ran into an old coworker, Sarah. We hadn't spoken in years, but she recognized me immediately. She took one look at me and said, "You okay?" "You look wrecked." Normally I'd have brushed it off, but something in me cracked. I just said, "My wife's cheating on me with my best friend." Flat out. No filter. The words hung there like they didn't even belong to me. To my surprise, she didn't recoil. She just put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Then you don't need either of them. You deserve better than that." It was such a simple thing, but it hit me hard. Because for weeks, all I'd heard were lies, gaslighting, and my own doubts. Hearing someone else just validate me felt like oxygen after drowning. Later that night, I did something I hadn't done since this started. I wrote everything down. Every red flag, every excuse, every lie. Seeing it on paper made it real. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't insecurity. It was betrayal, plain and simple. That list became my anchor. Anytime L tried to sweet talk me or D crept into my thoughts, I'd look at it and remind myself, no, this is what they did. This is who they are. The turning point wasn't some Hollywood "I'm free" moment. It was quieter than that. It was me realizing I can't control their lies, but I can control what I do next. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt a flicker of strength. Once that flicker of strength lit up, it was like something inside me finally woke up. I stopped asking why they did it and started asking, what the hell am I going to do now? The first step was practical. I pulled all the bank statements, credit card bills, phone records, anything that could give me clarity. Sure enough, I found charges that didn't add up. Hotel stays, dinners at places she never mentioned, Uber rides from addresses that weren't work or home. It was like peeling back a rotten floorboard and realizing the rot went deeper than I thought. Next, I quietly met with a divorce lawyer. Just walking into that office felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. The lawyer didn't sugarcoat it. She told me Elle's manipulative behavior wasn't uncommon and that I needed to protect myself financially before confronting her again. That jolted me awake. Protecting myself. That was new. For weeks, all I'd done was bleed out emotionally, but now I was finally building armor. At home, I played it cool. Elle thought she had me under control. Her little gaslight and guilt routine. She'd slide into bed at night like nothing was wrong, toss out a casual "love you" on her way out the door. Each time she said it, it sounded faker, like a bad actress delivering a bad line. But I let her think I was still in the fog. Meanwhile, I started packing small things, moving some clothes and important documents to a storage unit. She didn't notice, or maybe she was too arrogant to care. Either way, it gave me a strange sense of power, like I was slowly reclaiming ground she thought she owned. The biggest shift, though, was mental. I went from "how could they do this to me" to "they did this." Now I choose what comes next. And that mindset change, tiny as it was, felt like the first breath of real freedom. It all came to a head one Friday night. I had spent the day quietly gathering evidence and mentally preparing myself. Elle came home, all smiles and casual chatter, completely unaware that I wasn't the same person she'd been manipulating. I laid it all out. Every lie, every text, every dodged question. I even mentioned the charges I'd found, the patterns of deception. I watched her face as I spoke, expecting the smug smirk or the gaslight grin, but instead it flickered between panic and anger. "Are you insane?" she hissed at one point. "This is all in your head." "No, Elle," I said, my voice steady for the first time in months. "This isn't in my head. This is real. You're cheating. You've been lying. And D? He's been lying too." She lunged at me with the classic manipulator defense. Tears, accusations, guilt trips. "You're trying to ruin everything. You're ruining us. How could you even think this?" I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just handed her a folder with all the proof I'd collected. Receipts, emails, screenshots of text messages, photos. She skimmed it, eyes widening, mouth opening and closing like a fish. Then she did the last thing I expected. She laughed. A short, sharp laugh that had nothing but malice in it. "You think this changes anything? You'll never make me admit anything. You're pathetic." For the first time, I didn't care about her words. She could lie, scream, guilt trip, none of it mattered. I'd finally reached the point where her manipulations couldn't touch me. I left the room, closed the door behind me, and felt a calm wash over me that I hadn't felt in months. That night, I slept without nightmares for the first time in forever. After the final confrontation, something inside me finally cracked in a healthy way. For months, I'd been holding this swirling mix of anger, hurt, and confusion inside, letting it rot quietly. Now, with the evidence laid out and the truth undeniable, I could finally release it. I started small, punching a pillow in my empty apartment, screaming at the ceiling, crying until I couldn't anymore. It felt ridiculous at first, but each outburst chipped away at the weight I'd been carrying. By the end of the first night, I was exhausted, but strangely lighter. Then came the clarity. I began thinking not about revenge or punishment, but about me. Who I was, who I wanted to be, and how I refused to let two manipulative people define my self-worth. I realized I had spent years bending to Elle's charm and Dee's humor, letting them control my perception of reality. No more. I made a list of things I wanted to rebuild. Friends I'd ignored, hobbies I'd dropped, even career goals I'd put on the back burner. For the first time in years, I felt like I had some control over my life again. It didn't erase the betrayal, nothing could, but it turned the pain into something actionable. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was someone who could make decisions, set boundaries, and reclaim dignity. That night, I slept again. Deeply, fully, without fear of the phone buzzing with another text or email. For the first time, I felt like me again. By the following week, I had time to think without the fog of shock and rage clouding every thought. I had two options: try to salvage the marriage or walk away completely. I thought about what that would really mean. Could I ever trust Elle again? Could I sit across from her at dinner, knowing the lies she told me? The nights she spent with Dee while pretending to be my partner? Could I rebuild a marriage that had been poisoned by manipulation and deceit? The answer was a hard, clear no. And then there was Dee. The thought of forgiving him or trying to remain friends was laughable. The man I'd trusted like a brother had not only betrayed me, but tried to spin it as if I were the problem. No reconciliation was possible there either. So I made my decision. I was done. Divorce was the path forward, not out of anger alone, but out of self-preservation. I wanted to protect myself emotionally, financially, and mentally. I started the paperwork quietly, keeping my plans to myself until everything was official. It was terrifying at first. Ending a 7-year marriage, breaking off a friendship I'd had for decades. It felt like stepping off a cliff, but deep down, I knew this was the only way I could reclaim my life. I was choosing myself for the first time in a long time. The first few months after filing for divorce were brutal, I won't lie. There were nights I cried alone, went for long drives just to escape my apartment, and stared at the ceiling wondering how everything had gone so wrong. But slowly, the fog began to lift. I reconnected with friends I had neglected. I joined a weekend hiking group and started running again. Things I loved but had abandoned while drowning in the chaos of marriage and betrayal. I even reconnected with family members I hadn't talked to in years. Each small step reminded me that my world wasn't just L and D. I existed outside of them. One night, I found myself laughing at a stupid joke a friend made, and it hit me like a wave. I hadn't laughed like that in months. That little spark, that tiny moment of joy, was proof that I could feel again, that I could heal. I also realized that I didn't need revenge. The knowledge that they had destroyed their own bonds and the clarity I'd gained was enough. L and D would continue living their lives, but I would no longer be a part of their manipulation, lies, and games. Most importantly, I started forgiving myself for trusting, for loving, for believing in the people I thought deserved it. Their betrayal wasn't a reflection of my worth, it was a reflection of who they were. And accepting that made all the difference. Looking back, I can honestly say this experience broke me, but in the best way possible. I was forced to confront not just their lies, but my own blind spots, my own willingness to ignore red flags because I wanted things to be perfect. I learned that charm and charisma can hide cruelty, that even the people closest to you can betray you, and that trusting your instincts is never a bad idea. My advice to anyone in a similar situation: trust your gut. If something feels off, investigate. Don't let charm or excuses blind you. Document everything: emails, texts, receipts. They can be vital, emotionally and legally. Protect yourself first. Emotional clarity, financial security, physical safety, those come before trying to salvage relationships. Seek support. Friends, family, therapy. Isolation makes the betrayal feel worse. Forgive yourself. Being deceived doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Learn, don't dwell. I can't say it was easy to walk away from 7 years of marriage and decades of friendship, but I can say that reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my peace of mind was worth every sleepless night and every tear. Now I laugh again. I trust carefully and I value myself more than I ever did before. And honestly, that feels like winning, even after losing everything I thought mattered.